Okay. Good evening, everyone. I call the Planning Commission meeting to order. Monday, February 5th, 6 o'clock. Do a roll call. Steve?
Here.
Josh?
Here.
John?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Okay, Kate is excused, and we still have an empty chair in case anybody would like to be on the Planning Commission. First item on the agenda is approved Planning Commission minutes for November 6th.
I would make a motion to accept the planning commission meeting minutes as written.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second to approve Planning Commission minutes for November. Any discussion on the motion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried, thank you. The next item on the agenda is review and approval of downtown riverfront improvements phase 2. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor and Planning Commission members. So before you tonight is the Phase 2 improvements that are being proposed for your review and approval based on your comments and suggestions. So I wanted to start off with a little bit of background. In 2003, the City of Prescott started a tax increment finance district to promote economic development and the revitalization of the downtown. This was done at that time due to the fact that to remove blighted areas in which structures and buildings have become dilapidated, deteriorated, or aged. Then in 2015, 2014, and 2015, the City of Prescott started the process of planning for the downtown riverfront improvements in the formation of a riverfront committee. Also during this time, the city began working on updating the city's comprehensive plan that called out the future land use along this area to be parks and public space. Finally, in 2020, the city completed an assessor's plat to prepare work and for verification of the property ownership down along the riverfront. So just to give you an idea, this is a concept that was done with the riverfront community back in 2014 and 2015. I wanted to a lot of what we used, I guess just to step back a second, but a lot of what the design work that went into the phase 1 that was done north of the riverfront used a lot of these concepts, and is what some of the things that we looked at as well when we were discussing the second phase. This specifically down at Jake's Boat Lodge was turning this area in more of a public space and adding green space. The one thing that was not included was that this original concept called for some outlooks and outcrops that would also be used for fishing. Since we ended up putting in a fishing pier, those were not included in this concept that we'll be reviewing in a second. Additionally, in terms of background, the city updated the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan for the proposed improvements that were called out in Jake's Park and the public boat ramp, Merkard Mill Park, and the Riverwalk. These changes included restoration of the shoreline, exploring options for additional dock space, new restrooms, trail connections, signage to and from other trail systems, adding a fishing pier, restoring, rehabbing the boat launch, and improving overall aesthetics and the parking area. So phase 1 was completed in 2022. It included new courtesy dock, reconstruction of Orange Street, improvements to 2nd Street with a security fence along the railroad, sidewalk, and parking layout, and the addition of 2 scenic overlooks and increased green space with tables and benches. And then finally, this last year, we put in a new fishing pier and updated the boat launch as well. So planning for phase 2 began at the Parks and Public Works Committee, and I should say planning above and beyond what already took place in 2014 and 2015 and the other work that was done. For phase 2 started in 2022 with the Parks and Public Works Committee and proceeded throughout 2023. Council reviewed it at a workshop and then approved ultimately what's before you tonight as a concept plan for your review and approval. So funding and schedule right now, the current projected cost is $2,780,534, which is to be paid out of the remaining life of the TID number 4 revenues. This expenditure period for TID number 4, though, however, is ending in February of 2025, so a bond will have to be issued for this project. So just for a proposed schedule, what it looks like, spring, summer 2024 will be surveying the project, fall 2024 project design, early 2025 borrowing for the project, and then winter 2025 bidding the project out with spring, summer 2025 construction. So there is a more detailed plan in front of all of you tonight for your review, just because it is kind of hard to read off the screen. But just to go from left to right, starting at the top. First, we'll be working with BNSF Railway and doing a pedestrian crossing for the railroad right here to add connection from Front Street to 2nd Street in front of the condo so that you may go on either direction. Additionally, then we'll be making a trail connection that will be connecting, so when you go under the railroad, you can continue on the trail and make your way all the way along the riverfront. Let me see if I can get a better, there we go. Make your way all the way along here. Then additionally, we're calling for our proposed transient dock, which would be something that we could use for boaters. We hear often this last year when we were talking about things that we did not move forward with, but the paid parking situation, we heard a lot about how boaters were looking for more opportunities for parking along our riverfront. The courtesy dock doesn't offer enough space. Additionally, when we look at the economic stability, one of the reasons that we're considering this is obviously if you can turn over a spot 3, 4, 5 times into our restaurants, it offers more opportunities for our restaurants and our retail shop as well. Then moving your way along to Merker Park, one of the things that we're discussing here is adding fencing that will match with the phase 1 that you see, as well as bollards. And as you move along, we'll be adding lighting as well here. Pro's new park sign as well. One of the things that we are working on as well is working with the Prescott Historical Society and putting down markers. If you've seen this, there's some of them up at Freedom Park, but doing 3 or 4 with the Historical Society, kind of talking about the history of the riverfront and what Prescott used to be along this area. So adding those incrementally as well, working with them. Then we're looking at, and this is what goes back to what we discussed with the Riverfront Committee back in 2014, 2015. Looking at closing down Front Street here or vacating it, and the connection would still be there with Second Street. The condominium users would still have their full access. We would be making these bollards so that emergency staff could still get in and around the building as they currently can. Adding a sidewalk, creating more green space. We'd be putting in a minor playground equipment with benches, tables. We'd be looking at adding a shelter here and then bathrooms as well. So this parking that would be taken away would actually just be pushed back here. And then additionally, we'd be adding parking here. So overall, we wouldn't be losing any parking spots. We'd actually be gaining 5 from what's totally there, currently right there. And then looking further, adding a trash enclosure here, bike rack. We'd be taking, I don't know if you've been down there recently, but the area of the boat launch is quite beat up. So we'd be looking at a complete mill and overlay of this section of pavement and replacement, and then putting bollards along the current sanitary lift station that's there, and that's more of a protection issue as people come in and out as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Plan Commission, offer input, looking for your input for the phase 2 of the riverfront improvements, and then looking for a motion to approve the plan as is or with any sort of recommended changes. So I'll turn it over to the Mayor and Plan Commission for comments and questions.
I've got one for you. The situation with the TIF, with that TIF, how healthy is it? I mean, if this is gonna close out next year, what are we gonna be generating to, is the TIF gonna act as it was designed to act out, to where the increase in appraised and property values and the taxes, we'd have to bond for 2.7 million, is that what you're saying on this?
Correct.
With the full amount, there's nothing left in the TIF as far as the cash?
Well, so there would be a small amount that would, so it wouldn't, to your point, you're correct. We wouldn't have to do the full 2.7, I believe is actually 2.4, 2.3 to 2.4, and
Yeah.
it is generating a healthy amount as it is currently. It's what we used for phase 1, and fortunately with the amount of TIF that we had, we didn't have to bond it all for it. We also got a $600,000 grant from the DOT, so we'll actually be in 2024 looking for other grant opportunities to apply for, but it is generating a healthy enough amount where it shouldn't have, currently as it is projected, wouldn't have any issues paying for the bond.
I just wonder about that, because today's interest rates, I don't know what you guys, when's the last time you let bonds out, but,
So
I would guess.
currently right now for Elm Washington Street and Locust, we were borrowing at about 3.9.
Okay.
And in talking with our financial advisors, it's still around that rate for municipal bonds, about 3.94%.
Do you foresee, you said you did get a grant on it, so if the total cost on this, you projected it to be 2.7, does it look like you're gonna be bonding out for roughly 2 or a little bit more than that, or?
Well,
do
if
you
we
know?
if we were fortunate enough to get a grant, generally speaking, they are reimbursement grants that we'd be looking at, so we would have to make that determination if there's a way we could temporarily do a loan from other funds and then pay that back internally, or if we'd have to look at another option.
So that does run out next year. We're gonna have to close that TIF out next year.
The expenditure period runs out in February of 2025. The TIF itself doesn't close till 2030.
Okay. All right. I got another question for you.
Okay.
Bollards.
Yes.
Educate me on what they are.
So, and some of the plan commission might know better than me, but basically they're a type of structure. They can be made out of like a plastic material if you're looking for more, like the lighting style metal, or they can be made out of straight concrete or cement to more security style. So the ones when we say bollards for here, they're usually more of a harder structure so people can't just drive through them, whereas when we're talking with lights.
Have you walked down by the railroad bridges recently?
Yeah.
You know those arms that look like this?
Mm-hmm.
And they can fall down so that ambulance can drive over them?
Okay.
Those are bollards.
Okay. All right.
They're no longer there either.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. I walked that thing every day, and they're not there.
More, I guess.
They're easy to mess with, so I'm guessing a lot of people just hold them and fall down.
Sure.
That'd be a fun thing to do for a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I've got another one for you. As far as the docks that are there, you know, at Merkard Mill Park, and reading presentation, thoughts there in making those to where there might be some that are overnight docks?
Yeah, so right now we've discussed making a percentage that would have electricity and be overnight and it would be paid. That's still a discussion, although also there's been discussion about potentially, and this would be something that, about looking at the effect of if we took this section and turned it in more to a fishing pier, so that you could have docks when you turn left, whereas turn right. But that's just been suggestions that have been offered. They are not, right now, the plan before have them all docks.
The plan is for then down at the boat launch, is for it to be some picnic facilities, and also, you're gonna put in restrooms there also?
Yes.
Okay.
So they'd operate the same as the beach, which we've just set to 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. and they'd be on a locking system. So like we did at the beach, they would automatically unlock at 6 a.m. and then automatically lock at 9 p.m.
Would those bathrooms be seasonal or year-round?
Well, right now we've said they'd be the same as the beach, so they'd be seasonal, but there could be an opportunity where we make those year-round, but we'd have to look, I think, at heating. Yeah.
The other thing that's gonna be like the beach, I mean, those would probably be open longer than the beach, right?
We could change it. Right now it would be the same time frame as 6 a.m. to 9.
No, I'm talking,
Seasonally.
Sure.
I mean, the beach season's longer than the warm enough weather without
Sure.
heat for fishing or
Yep.
whatever.
Yes, so we could leave them in terms of the time frame, instead of being May to September, we could leave them open till, long.
Or whatever the case might be. Might vary year to year.
I've got a question to piggyback off of the bond topic. This conversation in 2003 and created some funding source for these types of activities, and that's what that TID account is that?
So, yeah, so in the state of Wisconsin, when you start a TIF, you have to create a TIF plan, and that creates your expenditures of what you can expend it on. Looking at the plan in 2003 when it was started, it was looking specifically at future, and type of improvements that we're looking at, like docks and parks and things like that.
This account is falling short, so what, the bond? Is that, am I
No,
understanding
nothing's falling short right now. The TIF is fully funding these improvements. It's just that it generates it so much every year, and we have to have our expenses paid by February of 2025. After that date, you can no longer expend any funds. So in order to do this and have that portion of funding set aside, and then that increment can keep going to payment of that.
There's still money coming into it until 2030.
Correct.
And then this bond, this is part of the city's 5-year, this part of try to get what we started done? Or how's that all work?
Sorry, just repeat that one.
So, they have a 5-year plan, right, for your
Oh.
expenditures, right?
Yeah, so part of our capital plan, it is part of our capital improvement plan in terms of future projects and expenditures, correct?
And this is part of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of like all of it, because they can't spend any money after that.
So there are a few other smaller, not a TIF, like I'll be redoing Cherry Street this year in terms of reconstruction, or not reconstruction, but mill and overlay and replacement of some storm sewer, as well as sidewalk. And then we're looking at developing a parking lot off Dakota Street to help for parking, so that's something that we'll be talking about in our next item, but there are some other minor, nothing as large as, but minor expenditures still.
Is Dakota Street in the tip boundaries? And for the tip boundary?
It is, yes.
It is?
Yep.
It's been a while since I've been down there during the busy times, but the boat landing, has there been some thought as enough parking there for boats for, since this is a perfect opportunity to potentially address something like that? From what I recall, during the busiest times, people park on the street up top, with their boats. If we're gonna be converting this upper into car parking, it just seems like we're packing a lot into a little area, which is just the nature of it because it's a small area, but that's all been thought.
Discuss boat parking, I think when you're looking at the overall plan and the things that have been discussed throughout since 2003, 2015 and now, 2003, 2015 and now, unfortunately, there's just so much space that you have to look in. We still are going to be all this, and then there's still overflow boat parking up here. But in terms of additional space beyond that, there's unfortunately not another area that you can convert.
I have a boat, and I always park in the overflow because it's a long trailer. And it's very rare for this lot to be full up
Okay.
here.
Yeah, it's good to know.
And I think if people park, they'll park like right here. I think they probably don't know you there. I don't know. Or they're just lazy.
No, there's probably, I don't know, I'm sure. And so is this green space currently? Yeah, to the boat parking?
Yes, so this would be a rough approximation of exactly where the green space would
So that's
start.
not moving left or right, that's not planned to move at all, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one element to this, the city is not allowed to turn that green space into parking. Is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
Yeah, we bought the purchases through a Knowles Nelson grant, and the DNR will not allow us, and Carter knows a little bit more, but will not allow us to change the use. In fact, even to put playground equipment there, we have to have them review anything that we put in there, and they have to approve it before anything can be put in there.
But parking was not one of the things that were in that grant.
And I wouldn't think convert it to parking, but I was just thinking if that is a problem, space allowed it, you could add one line or something. Now would be the time to do it, right? 'Cause but, no, this is awesome. I like this.
Has there been any more discussions about that gear house?
We met with Dallas Akers with the Prescott Historical Society. He said that we would be with him to make him do this in 2025 to get it re-roofed and then repainted.
And then they can open it.
We didn't get into those discussions, but that is something obvious. I know we talked about in Parks and Public Works of if there could be open more often, but that's something we can talk with them more about if there's an opportunity to either put more plaques outside so people have it open more for people to go in and look at items inside.
Any discussion with Public Works as far as needing to dedicate more time to keep those areas upkept, especially that restaurant? Those people getting off those boats tend to take advantage of the restroom and not always.
Well, one of the things that we just turned over at the beach was that similar issue, and we put in cameras and we put in a locking system, so we're hoping one of the things, but also to our police department, when something does happen, that we can actually find people that are doing this and making sure that we're deterring them. So that's one of the reasons as well that when we put in these bathrooms that we'd be making those improvements as well here. I think unfortunately outhouses, temporary outhouses specifically, do lend more to people just thinking they can take advantages and throw things, and we've had issues with them being tipped over as well.
Yeah, I know.
Any other thoughts or questions?
The cost concerns me, you know. I'm not privy to the budget and as far as, you know, what this would put the city up against on a principal and interest on a yearly basis, but 2.5 project, that's a lot of money, you know. I know we want to bring people in town. I know I definitely am proud of that area with what the city's done and what's been done down there the last 20 years, but that's a lot of money. Just a concern.
It is a lot. It is a large project. I guess the question I would have is, if we don't, you know, undertake this project, would we just be losing, like, you know, it's use it or lose it with this fund? You know, are there other things on outside of the riverfront improvements?
Well, with the expenditure period ending in February, we would, if we move forward with this project, it would most likely be the minor projects that we do have, like repairs. We would just end up closing the TIF early, specifically, so.
But that would be leaving money on the table, correct?
Well, in terms of making improvements to this, I mean, and just to be specific, this area was started in 2003 as the idea that it was a blighted area, a blighted TIF district, meaning every area was, and I wasn't here in 2003, so I don't want to speak to what the situation was, but from my understanding, it was, in order for a blighted area, you have to have a certain amount of deterioration, dilapidation, and structures. So the idea with this TIF district is try to make improvements so that this never happens again in the future. Because once this TIF district closes, we don't want to ever start a TIF district like this again, because we want to have a that's thriving and successful and economic, stable. So that's kind of what this project looks at overall, is trying to make set it up for success.
The grant money available, have we run into a certain amount of success on that, and can we look forward to that going forward? I know uncertainties there, but
We've been successful with grants. I think the one issue that we just, we always keep in mind is that we just got a $600,000 DOT grant for the first phase. We're getting about, it's slipping my mind, but a certain amount of money from the DNR for the McGee Park, a grant. Some of the issue is when you get too successful, and then they say, well, we've given so much to this community already, we want to, the DNR and DOT does look at criteria of spreading it out throughout the state. That's the only when you're looking at these grants is if, once you start getting them, there's eventually, they'll always consider like, well, we've already given them some money. So that would be the only concern is, are we too successful in getting grants? But we're still going to make the application and we're successful or it's not.
Well, Cedar Corps did say that it's a good project and there's a good chance that, would still be in the running. They pretty much have their thumb on the pulse of those grant stuff and where they're going and who's getting them. And you have to have a good project. And, improving the riverfront and stuff like that is on the higher end of their scale. So I think there's a pretty good chance. But you just never know. It's a risk you have to take. You have to apply for them and, keep your fingers crossed. There's never any guarantee on the grant. Any other questions or comments? I'm looking for a motion to approve the
So moved.
phase 2.
I'll make a motion to approve phase 2.
A motion, a second to approve the riverfront improvement phase 2. Is there any other discussion on the motion? I need a roll call, or all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Next item on the agenda is update on a proposed riverfront mixed-use development at 214 Front Street and 20 Orange.
I'll start with a background on this. Plan Commission and Council approved the concept development in April 2023, and it's currently been under the Fire Department review regarding emergency response access to the site. This project would necessitate a PUD due to the proposed magnitude of development. Specifically, it would exceed the maximum height requirement and surpass the limit of 50% of dwelling units per floor space in our commercial district. So the concept plan that they proposed, this is the approximate site boundary. They have proposed this 4-story structure with retail on the bottom. This is the exterior rendering. And here's a floor-by-floor plan of it. You see the 2 lower levels dedicated to parking. They would be proposing an automated parking garage system. In this first floor with retail floor space and a pedestrian boardwalk out here. And the second, third, and this says third, it's supposed to be fourth floors, dedicated to condominium units. There would be 21 units in total as proposed. So the challenges we've been facing, I know you guys can't really see it on there, so you guys have copies up here. Front Street is a one-way road with the turnaround at the end. And one-way streets, the NFPA requires or recommends a 70-foot diameter turnaround for fire apparatus. Currently, this is only 45 feet, so you can't really call Front Street a fire lane due to that. Also, the fire department has identified this area here as a collapse zone of the building potentially, so you wouldn't be able to park fire apparatus there. For the ground level, the fire department would require 16 feet of access here to get to the back side of the building on the ground level to set up ladders and whatnot, and 5 feet of access to get around to this side of the building as well. And then on Orange Street, it is a single access to Front Street via Orange Street, so there's a high likelihood of vehicle congestion that could impede fire access, as well as vehicle curbside parking here would have to be removed to help unimpeded fire department access, and that would be required to be replaced elsewhere. So what we're looking for tonight essentially is, does the Planning Commission favor the removal of 13 parking spaces on Orange Street to be replaced elsewhere in the downtown at the cost of the developer? So I'll turn it over to the Mayor and the Planning Commission for any questions or comments, and we can do our best to answer those.
So they're removing those 13 parking spots because they're considering that a fire lane.
That would be the only option to dedicate a fire lane, and that is what our fire department said they'd be most comfortable with. That is kind of what we're allowing you guys to decide, is if we would want to move forward doing that. And we're working with Cedar Corporation on a cost estimate to replace those parking spaces in Dakota Street. So they're working on what the probable cost would be to add 13 spaces to our already factored in expansion that we'd be doing this year.
So it goes all the way to the street downtown, all from the.
Yeah, from Broad Street to Front Street, all the parking spaces on the side of Orange
Okay, so
Street.
what effect is that gonna have on, Fort?
It's a good question, and that's something I try to figure out, is what is exactly the value of those spaces. It's difficult to put parking spaces, trying to figure out a utilization, proximity to all the downtown destinations. This area on Orange Street obviously has a higher utilization rate and is destinations than on Dakota Street, so that's something we would have to weigh, but it would have an impact on the downtown without having that immediate access.
I mean, you already have, and if you're gonna limit her parking to that business, that's kind of detrimental to her business, in my opinion.
In the motel, the hotel.
Yeah.
Mayor? Just the Port Hotel has their guests, because they stay overnight, and we don't have overnight parking, they go up to Orange, and that is a 24 hours.
So that's not any overnight parking.
Not for the port, but, I mean, it's obviously still used regularly by all the other businesses
Okay.
during the day and all that.
Thank you.
What is, sorry,
Go ahead.
what is the Dakota Street parking idea? Where's the additional parking gonna go? Any plan on that yet? Like, in addition to what we have currently?
It would have been nice, we could have printed out a concept plan. I'll try to describe it the best I can, but if you're familiar with on Dakota Street, there are about 5 to 7 parking spaces that Mike constructed. Our current plan would be to extend that strip all the way to Cherry Street, but with this factored in, 13 spaces up there. So we've asked Cedar Corporation what it would take to also bring that further south, the existing parking lot, to try and get 2 rows of parking up there rather than just one along Dakota Street. That's what Cedar Corporation is looking at, and that would hopefully add what we were already factoring in with our expansion plus the supplement of these 13 spaces.
So there's no consideration made here to go from Orange Street to Kinneconnect Street on Dakota Street? You're not looking to open that up?
I don't think we've looked at that as a possibility, no.
Going from what? Say it again?
Orange Street, Second Great Hill,
Yep.
to Kinneconnect Street. That road hasn't been vacated. There was talk with us through the years on that being an opportunity for us to increase the parking for downtown. I thought that's what you were talking about with Dakota Street when you were talking about the option. I thought maybe you guys were exploring that issue.
Yeah, that hasn't been in our discussion. We can certainly look into it.
And then the cost on this, as far as who's going to foot the cost on the closure in those 13 spaces on Orange to get more on Dakota Street, would it be up to the city then to negotiate with the developer on this? Is that how we do that?
So what we would do is put together a cost estimate for developing a parking lot that would keep our original spaces that we were going to add, and then add this 10 to 11 spaces on top of that. And
Has
then
there
we
been discussions with the developers on this that maybe they'd have to foot the bill, or is that?
So we've basically told the developer that they would be in charge, they'd be at the cost of whatever these spaces are, what they would have to pay for, so.
Because it would be an inconvenience, with what we've got right now for parking downtown, as tough as it is. That's not a great place to park on that street going down to front, but it is, it's there, it's pretty accessible. It'd be an inconvenience.
Yeah, inconvenience. Further, you're adding 2 businesses, which
Yeah.
theoretically would be prosperous and probably additional traffic from what's already there. And I believe the first time we approved talking about this, those spots weren't deleted yet. They took a couple to get their access for their garage. I feel like this would be a pretty massive burden for the parking situation.
I mean, is this the only option? Like, if we don't approve removal of those parking spots along Orange Street, is this project dead in the water, or options as well?
We've discussed a number of options with the developers. Some of them have been decreasing their height of the building for our fire department to be more comfortable with that. And also going down to 2 stories, so they're meeting that 50% of floor space to dwelling unit. Then they would be conforming to the C1 district. They wouldn't have to provide, decreasing the magnitude of the development, but that hasn't. They're kind of focused on this 4-story development.
So is what is in front of the planning commission tonight is to recommend that we we allow those parking spots to be taken out? Is that what the question is gonna be when we make a motion on that? Nothing else as far as to preemptively go before the developer and see how he is with, or how they are with possible cost, possible.
So the plan would be either way, that the developer, even if the plan commission stated tonight they were okay with moving forward with the removal of these parking spots with the development, the plan either way would be for the developer would be to replace those parking spots at their cost, the city.
And they probably would be gone then. They'd be in the developer's plans for those to be gone. And they'd be working with the fire department on the other issues with height and how many stories and all that.
Yeah. I mean, they would be fine their share of the cost. You would be able to move forward with the next step, likely.
Parking in Prescott, I'm just spitballing here, living not too far from downtown, it's really become an issue, parking in downtown Prescott. Our downtown area has come alive, it seems, and it doesn't seem to be abating at all.
That's not what we heard at the open meeting from the community.
I know,
Parking was not an issue.
You guys took a beating on that.
Overwhelmingly not an issue downtown.
As
parking.
did the council, but I'd have to.
I guess I would like to see a rendering of where this new parking lot would be before I made a decision. I have a problem with making it fire lane, but I don't want the parking to be 3 blocks away.
It's gonna be.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
3 blocks away?
I think
It'll be about
additionally,
behind Holiday,
if
up
I,
to Dakota Street.
Okay, that's only a block and a half.
Yeah, it's not 3 blocks, but.
you know, the parking for the facility they're putting up, which is private, I believe their parking for their residents was kind of limited as well, right? They had just enough spots with a few extra spot per unit set up, and so you're gonna have additional parkers down there, now that you have residential in that region, theoretically too, visitors, etc. Like this is, more spots is hard to imagine. And then for the community to support this private project, the private project's gonna replace these spots for the community in an inconvenient location. Well, I would almost think we would need to sweeten the deal a little bit to make that worth doing. Sense to trade one for one from a somewhat convenient spot for the community members to a somewhat inconvenient spot doesn't seem,
Like they should do
you know,
5 or something?
yeah, or something. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, I get it. I totally get it.
Well, I would not be fair to the businesses that are already there.
This isn't open for public comment.
Okay.
Thank you. I agree. Taking away the parking, that's a tough sell.
So, Carter, you said the proposed additional parking would basically go all the way from Cherry to Orange along Dakota?
There is a point where it stops, because I know there's like the StreetLink building, and I think another building down there, but there's a little strip of parking now that's like spots.
Just extend that.
Yeah, at that furthest point towards is where it would stop. So it would from that point towards Cherry Street, essentially.
I know in the past there was talks about like another tier to the existing parking lot. Is that still, you kind of mentioned something about
we
that?
initially thought that, and then costs were going to be too high, so
Oh.
we scaled it down to just that strip,
I see.
continuing that strip. But now, with this involved and wanting to add more there, possibility back
I
up
gotcha.
to that additional tier, seeing what that actually would cost with Cedar Corporation, drawing up those numbers.
The planning commission, if they would like to delay or put this back on the agenda for next meeting, we can work with Cedar Corporation to get a proposed concept for where the, like for that parking lot.
I think that'd be a good idea, you guys.
I agree with that.
Okay, with
I would rather do that than just say no, just to say no.
and then get a rendering of what parking could be, the second tier.
Yeah. Sure.
Would they entertain the idea of sweetening the deal, if you will, a little bit too? Because I feel like community members aren't gonna wanna trade somewhat convenient for somewhat inconvenient one for one. That's my 2 cents, but I think it'd be a thing.
Yeah, we can discuss that with them, see what there are for that.
The community stands to benefit new business fronts, which will be hopefully pretty, you know,
Right.
which is nice. But outside of that, all they're doing is losing spots that are quite valuable, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, from what I've heard about the business and the building and such, you know, it would definitely have some features that would make it a better downtown area, but I'm with you on that. I think that parking is just such an issue. It really is. You guys got beat up and told that it wasn't an issue downtown, but it's an issue.
How much is the Hastings two-story parking garage? I feel like I've asked that before, just in conversation.
We've been over that.
I don't know how much that one costs, but
We need one of them behind the free,
yeah, looking into parking ramps and parking structures with my research on those, nowadays it's anywhere from 30 to 35,000 per spot for those structures. So.
The one in Hastings was built by the Confluence and given, so it was a private deal.
I know I already brought it up, but I'd just like some more closure on like, is this, you know, in fire code issues? Like, is there any other options where this project can move forward outside of completely, you know, deviating from their current plans? You know, that the fire department can figure something, you know, with them, figure something out where it's not gonna. It's acceptable to all parties, I guess. I'm certainly no fire code expert, so I guess I obviously see with the narrow Second Street there what the issue are, some of the issues are, but
We can initiate those conversations further. This was when we met with this is the up that he saw, and we looked at it in a couple different, directions, but it keeps coming back to access off Orange Street and wanting that unimpeded, almost guaranteed, you could say. Fire access in the event if there were a fire there. This site is kind of unique where there's really only two sides of the building that have, real direct access to it. If you look at our other condominium building further down Front Street, that one has four sides of fire access to it, so.
I guess just a general question for Plan Commission. If the development was to, say, lose a story, but it lost the commercial story and it was still 3 stories of condominiums, would the Plan Commission have issue with that?
Say that again, sorry, that would lose its commercial?
So if it was to go from 4 stories to 3 stories, but the story that was lost was the first floor commercial, would the Plan Commission, we'd still have to go through the same process, but would the Plan Commission have issues with it?
Would that change the parking flow?
But
I mean, you
that
still
would,
have 3 stories of condominium.
One or two businesses with people in and out.
And that's not zoned for that, right? That's meant to be businesses, right, not residential?
correct, it's all
Correct.
commercial, so that would still require it to go through the same process of a PUD.
The appeal to this for me was Jason, so I would be probably a no on that personally. We can build condos somewhere else for residents.
I would agree with you on that.
So we're probably looking to table this till the next meeting and bring back the information that's been brought forward. That good with you? That good with everybody?
Yeah, the first time we kind of approved the conversation, at that time, they were losing a couple of spots.
Like 2 or 3.
Yeah, and it was like, well, that's well, but
Yeah,
we're
that,
gaining some beautification of the riverfront and 2 new businesses. This is great.
Well, it wouldn't be 2 new businesses.
Right, to replace old one. Well, I believe they had 2 in the plan.
But the one is gonna be the liquor store.
Yeah,
Already there.
okay, yep, that, and new, by new, I mean.
It'll look new.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
yeah, in the situation, a couple spots, if they were to have their underground access on Orange Street, I think they've determined if they're doing 3 stories of condominiums, they're gonna have to go on this side and get more levels of underground parking there. So that situation where they were losing parking there was in a different concept plan that they, I believe, are no longer pursuing, but we'll see.
Is the fire department, when you speak to them, is this just good enough? Do they feel quite uneasy about the whole thing, and this is what they're doing to mitigate some of that?
Well, I think they're comfortable with it. We would still be relying on, what's it called, mutual aid?
Mutual aid.
Mutual aid,
Ladder
because
truck, yeah.
ladder trucks, because we don't have a ladder truck in the Prescott Fire Department, so that would still be something we would rely on, and I know that's not ideal, but it's what we have, so.
It's a sprinkled building.
Yeah, but,
You know,
yeah.
Okay, all good with that for now? Okay, thank you, Carter.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Discussion. Okay, next item on the agenda, small box retail restrictions, zoning code, chapter 35. Matt?
I got it. Yeah, so, yeah, in August 2023, we reviewed the Dollar Tree site plan. That was to be built in the vacant lot in the C2 district. And that was a general retail classification, so it was able to be there as a permitted use. So we were also made aware of some displeasure by the public regarding the development. So we've been researching the feasibility of a restriction on dollar store development in the future. So speaking with our city attorney, it would be possible through a number of ways, but the one we saw was most feasible was a dispersal ordinance, and that would act similarly with our smoke shop ordinance, which a store could not be a certain distance of another store or a certain number of stores per population size. So I guess what we're looking for tonight is if the Plan Commission believes we should consider, addressing the small box retail restriction in the new ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Plan Commission for any discussion or questions.
I've got one on our packet. It was from Phil Helgeson to Carter, and there's a sentence in there that said, "I would also note that in Wisconsin, this Dollar General just paid the DATCP." What is the DATCP?
Department of Agricultural Trade and Consumer Protection.
Okay, I had that question.
So is this just specifically dollar stores? Or could this be, is it, a bigger deal than that? Is it all small box retail store?
The term small box retail is pretty general because that would include hobby shops if they're selling like a particular item. So a makeup shop was what they used online as a example. So a small box retail store actually cover a pretty wide swath of smaller retail stores. You'd have to get more specific doing, you'd say maybe like a small box discount store, or sometimes they call them discount formula stores, a template of a build. So you can get specific with it. You just have to change the words a little bit.
So do you think this would deter other companies from actually coming here? Because we're actually looking at not having this one's gonna be okay. Do we wanna do that? Do we wanna go down that avenue of, I mean,
Well, if you look in the attached model ordinance, they do have a definition of small box discount store, and that does define it pretty specifically to like your dollar store type establishment.
just wondering is, because
I
Phil was very
agree.
vague on that. Well, it's okay, but
I agree. I don't think we want to.
Family Dollar?
We don't want to discourage other types of business from coming to town because they can't put it in this, radius of the existing dollar store.
Yeah. Can I put my candy store in or not?
Oh, right. So, I mean, I think if we, like Carter said, if you define it specifically enough that, you're really targeting.
We don't want dollar stores.
Well, and when we initially approved this project, I did have some concerns, in another dollar store in town, and due to some of the things that are mentioned in this memo from Phil, regarding the promoting the unhealthy lifestyle with the non-nutritious, non-fresh groceries.
Steve, I listened to a thing on the radio about this, and it's a big problem in a lot of small towns that don't have a grocery store. Because that's where people do their shopping, and that's where this whole nationwide, that's why it's coming up.
That being said, I don't really like to limit, free market enterprise and new business either, so I kind of not sure where I stand on it.
With what I read, I thought it was specific enough to just kind of to cover one type of store, and that is a dollar type store, but not necessarily the entrepreneurial type store like a flower shop or candy shop or any other entrepreneurial type of business. I don't think would get captured by this. But if they would, then I would not like it as much.
You have to make sure it was written correctly, written properly.
Mm-hmm.
So is the reason to consider this so that we could, without being arbitrary and capricious, that we could say, no, we're not gonna allow that store. That's pretty much the reason why. We would have it in our rules, that we could go back on that and say, you know what, we have this in our rules that it can't happen. We've got on that. That would be the reason that we would look seriously at this.
Correct.
Okay.
The biggest issue that we heard back is why does the city of Prescott need multiple dollars?
Heard that, you don't know how many times I heard that.
I get that statement.
And the follow-up was what
Yeah.
options, and specifically Commissioner Otto asked us to look into options or possibilities of what we could look at. And in talking with the mayor, we said we'd put it on the next plan commission. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but, so this was the option that we found that.
I shared her concerns that night. I did share her concerns, but I also realized that there really wasn't much that we could do.
Correct.
So to bring this to us and to let us know that there is an out here, and I don't know that we would exclude too many businesses if we were to.
Well, and it's too late to, obviously.
It's too late for that, and I realize that, and it's up, and it looks good, but I mean.
I mean, I don't have a problem if we had an ordinance, it's just, like you were saying, it's gotta be worded, like, pretty much where anybody that reads it go, they don't want a dollar store. That's the only store they don't want.
My question would be, and I don't know if you can answer this, but if one of the, our existing, is it Dollar General? And our incoming Dollar Tree, if one of them were to hypothetically, go under due to competition, and we had put this in place, they'd be grandfathered in, would another Or be able to business there?
I would think so.
I would say
don't
no,
know.
because they probably leave.
Close, if a use is discontinued for over 12 months, no longer considered illegal non-conforming, so they would have, the building would have 12 months to come back and to
With the
continue
same
its use.
continuous use. So really, this is gonna limit a third dollar store from going in that area. And what, would we say it's, like, what would the restriction be? What if it's on the other end of town? Are we restricting anywhere in town? I mean, has that been discussed?
I believe the reference was a mile, was the suggestion at one point, in terms of a dispersal.
How far is it from the multi-use storage down in the south end of town to the dollar stores?
It's more than a mile, I would guess.
I think so.
There is, on the second to last page of that topic, it does talk about half mile, 2 miles, 2.5. Yes. 1 mile is the most common.
It's on how you want to set the ordinance up, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So you could be
Yeah, I was just
strategic
wondering
in that
if
regard.
that had been discussed.
I really don't think it'd matter if you put a mile or 2 miles.
Well, we'll see. Time will tell if the Prescott can support 2 small box discount stores. We'll see.
They're putting them up everywhere. I drive to Danbury pretty regularly. There's one in every town now, and there's 2, 3 of them in
Yeah.
Siren.
They are everywhere.
And those are tiny communities,
Yeah,
and I think they're gonna do just fine. But
which I don't know,
people
I
will
mean,
say they hate them, and then they show up and buy the
That's
stuff.
because their overhead is so low.
yeah,
Just keep their overhead so
So what do we look,
low.
yeah.
Just keep their overhead so.
so what are we looking for here, to move this forward to council for?
What we look for tonight is just a
Sure.
recommendation of if you want us to move forward, working with our attorney to draft the language and then bring it back to you later, or if you'd wanna basically say, no, we're fine with our code the way it is and we don't need it. This.
I'd personally be okay with, as long as it's very, very clearly written not to discourage entrepreneurship, like small mom and pop shops or whatever,
Hobby shop or
whatever else besides discount dollar stores, which is what they've done. I think what some of the key verbiage they have in here about size and business model is doing just that.
John?
Yeah, I'm fine with.
Mike?
I agree with you.
Do we need a motion?
If you could, that'd be,
I'll make a motion to create a small box retail restriction.
Draft, right? We're
Draft.
saying a draft. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to draft a small box retail restriction under zoning code chapter 635. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of 2024 Planning Commission schedule.
so just a schedule before you tonight, so we're on the same page of meeting dates for your approval.
I'd make a motion to approve this as written, the plan commission schedule.
We have a motion, a second to approve the commission schedule for 2024. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any other business, other than our next meeting is Monday, March 4th?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
And second to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Good discussion.